This is where an ex-girlfriend of mine went to high school. She was, and always will be special to me. I never doubted her when she said she would always love me forever and ever. We really had something, but it had to end. She's Muslim, and I'm not. And the family just wouldn't have it, wouldn't allow for it. Her parents never knew I existed, as far as I know, unless it came out afterward. Her sisters knew I existed, but they thought we were just friends. They didn't know we were more than that. It was like having an affair with a married woman. We had to sneak around, or she had to sneak around, and we'd be walking around the neighborhood and we'd see somebody from her street coming our direction, and we'd have to turn around and disappear. That kind of thing. And she really played social media permissions, like who can see what of her social media presence. She really played that like a Swiss Army knife. She was a master of like letting certain people see us together, but certain others not. But it was like having an affair with a married woman. By the way, I hope this flag is not at half-mast for Rush Limbaugh. He died a couple of days ago. That would be surprising. But this woman was she was 16 years younger than me. She was 25 when we met. I was 41. Our real connection, or the spark, if you will, was that she had followed my websites like since she was 12 or 13 or something. She basically grew up with them. We never had any correspondence or communication as far as either of us could remember, until she contacted me on Facebook one day, and I didn't know who this was. And I'm like, why is this cute young woman hitting on me? You know, there happens to be a Muslim community center across the street from her school, but it's Indonesian. She's not Indonesian, she's Lebanese. But we had a pretty intense thing for a while, and then it was comfortable and everything made sense. But like I said, the family just would not have allowed for it to go any farther if they knew about it. And these weren't strict Muslims. You know, you hear about that kind of thing where fathers stone their daughters for dating outside the culture. There's nothing like that. It would not have come to anything even close to that, but they just would have made things very uncomfortable. I mean, to use a perfectly hypothetical example, they would have refused to pay for the wedding if there was going to be one. And we never talked about getting married, but she's the only woman I ever even considered in that realm. And they just would have made stuff very, very uncomfortable for everybody, for both of us. In the end, she became everything she said she did not want to be when she was with me. She became an Arab wife to an Arab husband, living the not totally strict Muslim lifestyle, but doing all the stuff they do. I never really learned much about Muslim rituals, even though we dated for 2.5 years. She wasn't really she was not observant of that kind of stuff when I knew her, like she is now. But yeah, we lasted 2.5 years, which is a pretty long time for that kind of an arrangement. At least I think it is. But when I say she followed my sites, we never had like email correspondence or even IM connections or anything like that. But she would post silly stuff on my message boards. She'd be like, "Marry me, Mark Thomas. I want to be your wife. I want to be your bride." This is when she was like 15 or 16. It's just silly little girl stuff. I mean, I don't mean to dismiss it or shoo it away, but it was harmless. And I've moved on from this a long time ago. I mean, I still think about these sorts of things. I think about those type of connections. Doesn't everybody? But it reminded me. This all came back to me though when I was at a bar one night, and this really beautiful Muslim woman came in with the hijab and the traditional attire. My girlfriend never wore any of that stuff, but she does now. But this beautiful Muslim woman came in with her friend, and they were waiting for her boyfriend to show up. And all she just was gushing about what a wonderful guy this person was, and how she'd really found the one. And he shows up, and it's, as I gleaned from overhearing the conversation, he was a evangelical Baptist from Alabama. Not even close to Muslim. And those two were so in love, it was palpable. It was really a beautiful thing to see. They were talking about wedding plans, which were still in the works. But I never gleaned from overhearing their conversation whether their parents knew about all this or if their family was involved. But it was an enviable situation, and I sort of regret not injecting myself into their conversation, because I could have learned a few things about how these intercultural relationships can be made to work. So like I said, she finally said she couldn't continue with this relationship. I knew it was coming. It was not a surprise. I wasn't even hurt by it. And I still have a line of contact with her. I used to talk to her probably about once a year. I don't think I've contacted her or her me in probably 3 years. Last time we connected was she heard about my Link NYC softie shenanigan. She said she found that story, and she actually wasn't even sure it was about me at first. But when the further down she got, even before they mentioned my name, she knew this had to be me. Like, she said this wasn't an only in New York thing. This is an only Mark Thomas thing. She was like really impressed. She said the legend lives. It was pretty funny. That's the last I heard from her. When she told me she was getting married, I was honestly happy for her, but I tried to act like the spurned ex or something like that. But I think she got the joke that I was just putting on airs. But I said, I hope he's at least better looking than me. She was like, well, he's interesting looking. But when I say that she would not have been disciplined by her family, but they would have made things very uncomfortable. That's true and everything, but you do hear about that kind of stuff happening here in Astoria. She knew an Egyptian girl who dated a white guy and tried to keep it a secret, but the family found out about it, and they would not let her leave the house for a year. And it's no joke, like that stuff really happens here. But like I said, there was never any risk of that happening here in our situation. I never met her parents, but her dad seemed like a pretty amiable guy. But again, they just wouldn't have had me. They wouldn't have let me in. I told my mother about all this. She said she had a similar experience when she was dating a Ukrainian guy that she knew from college. They got as far as he brought her home to meet his mother. And she was never, she didn't say anything outright racist or anti-American or anything, but she just made it pretty clear and unmistakable that she was not going to let this go any farther. And that was it. She never saw him again.